Hey, Thought Roomies. I'm your host, Hallie Rose. For this week's episode of The Thought Room, I sat down with former NFL player and all-around badass dude, Joe Hawley. Joe is a man of incredible wisdom. He is a straight-up knowledge monster with an insatiable thirst for self-improvement and an unstoppable propensity for diving head-on into his fears. Anyone who knows Joe knows his booming laugh, his twinkling eyes, and his out-of-this-world positive mentality. This episode was recorded back in May, and since then I've had the pleasure of having Joe become one of my closest friends and confidants. In fact, last week I got a voice note from Joe describing his last-minute ego-imploding decision to free fall out of a plane. And yesterday he sent me a text saying, "Going to swim with great white sharks off the coast of Mexico. Let's catch up in a few weeks." So for anyone who knows him well, his catchphrase is, "What a time to be alive." And he truly lives his life that way. He will do anything. Fear does not stop this man. Joe is a van lifer, and if you don't know what that means, you are about to find out. He also started a blog called Man Van Dog Blog, where he has been chronicling his adventures traveling around North America with his dog Freedom. This episode is very near and dear to my heart because it was actually the first ever interview I conducted for the Thought Room. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know that I take the Thought Room with me wherever I go in a backpack around the world. And as you can imagine, it takes me some pretty wild places. I've conducted interviews in New York City, Sedona, Arizona, Costa Rica, but this episode was recorded in a very special place. I drove 6 hours to a campsite outside of Freeport, Maine, where I met Joe, and this episode was actually recorded inside of Joe's decked out camper van. So I had all the podcast equipment set up, and we squeezed into the front seats of his van, and we had the doors open, and it was in the morning after this beautiful rainfall, and the birds were chirping, and I was drinking this keto coffee Joe had made me with about 50 grams of fat in it. And I had this moment, I had this wave of excitement wash over me as I realized that I was about to cross a threshold into a new chapter of my life. And I felt like, yes, this right here, this feeling, this is what I want to be doing. Sitting with people in the strangest of places, about to hear their epic stories. Some of the things we talk about in this episode are the role that meditation played in Joe's recovery from football and him proactively fighting against the potentiality of degenerative brain trauma, as well as we get into lifestyle diets, intermittent fasting, keto, plant-based diets, veganism, intuitive eating, and the myths and truths about how these stack up against the standard American diet. Let's dive in.
Are we recording?
We're recording.
Wow.
It's happening.
Let's take a clearing breath. We are here.
Nice.
Episode 1.
Mm-hmm. Joe Hawley, welcome to the Thought Room podcast.
Thanks for having me. What an honor.
We are sitting in your van recording this mobily from Freeport, Maine, where we rendezvoused yesterday and have been rocking out, camping out.
Yeah. What a crazy time to be alive, huh?
Yeah. I'm looking at your dog Freedom here
She's beautiful,
in
isn't
her
she?
bed, chilling. She gets to come on the road with you. And you are in the midst of some incredible adventures. And you've had quite a journey. You and I got to know each other just over a month ago. We met through Aubrey Marcus's Fit for Service program. And we'll probably get into what that is. But you've got a wildlife story.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
You're a former NFL football player.
That's right.
And most recently, you're staying in this incredible van that we're sitting in, and you're living the gypsy life, kind of driving all over the country.
That's right. I have no idea what I'm doing. It's crazy. I'll be honest with you. I'm just kind of going with the flow and, letting the universe guide me where I'm supposed to be. And at that right now, I really don't know where that's supposed to be. But I'm just enjoying the experience.
So let's back up a little bit and talk about, first of all, how did you go from playing professional football to now you're this man with a beard and a dog and you're just driving
I've
all
always
over.
had the beard.
Being super rogue.
Yeah. So I played 8 years in the NFL. I played 5 years with the Falcons, 3 years with the Buccaneers. And I had a blast. It was fun. Learned a lot. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that football's blessed me with. And it was a lot of work. It was hard, and it was tearing up my body. And I'm not the biggest. I played center, and I'm not the biggest guy out there. So I had to grind and scratch and, claw my way to be where I was at. And it took a toll on my body. Really started getting beat up, and it came to a point where over, a couple of years ago, I started, thinking about being done. And, I finally made enough money, and I had this decision to make whether I could, continue to grind and put my body through this, or walk away, save my money, and go experience life without football and who I was without football. And, I was ready to make that change. And at the same time, I was going through this whole transition. I actually was engaged at the time and went through a breakup as well. And, I was with the wrong woman. It just wasn't right. And I had all this transition happening, all this change all at once. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. So I figured, what, why not go travel? Everybody's always thought about, it'd be cool to do like a 48 state road trip or go travel the country. And one of my good buddies actually was doing the van life, and I started following a bunch of van lifers on Instagram. And I was like, that'd be pretty cool to get a van and just go on a road trip and just experience like what this freedom would be like. Cause I played football for 16 years in a row, and I never had a fall off. I was always going to training camp, always training, always had to be ready for something. And I just wanted to experience what it would be like to not have any of that and just go be free, be me, find out who I was without this sport of football. And so that's when I got the van, rescued Freedom from a local shelter, and we hit the road for the first time a little over a year ago. And I traveled the country for 8 months. It was an awesome experience. I started the blog, the Man Van Dog blog, to share the experience. I thought it was kind of, a unique thing, a unique opportunity I had to go have all this free time to go travel. Like, not a lot of people get to do that. So I thought it was kind of my responsibility to share the experience, to kind of bring people along with me. And that kind of grew into something that I didn't really expect. A lot of people, I've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of people, and it's kind of grown bigger than I would have ever imagined. And so I started realizing I had this platform where I could really have a positive impact on people's lives by just sharing my story and living the experience. So I traveled for 8 months last year. I'm not a big fan of the cold, so I took a break during the wintertime, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But since the blog kind of grew into something and I really enjoyed the experience, I kind of wanted to reorganize and, hit the road again. So I sold my old van. Now that, I was on the road for a while, I kind of realized exactly what I wanted. I found this new van, kind of manifested it. I can talk about that as crazy story. But this new van is awesome. It's badass. It's perfect in every way. I love everything about it. It's a lot more comfortable. It's easy to drive. And hit the road again about 2 months ago. And I've been heading up the East Coast. And, I hit DC, Philly, New York, Boston. And now I'm up in Maine kind of recharging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's wild.
Incredible.
I'm meeting great people on the road like yourself.
Thank you.
Who are doing big things.
Yeah.
So excited for you.
Oh, thank you so much. So I'm just sitting in here. We're sitting in your new van. And for all of you who can't see this van is so incredible. It's so cool. And it's everything I think that one person would need to just completely be living that gypsy life. And but it's also, it's pretty like pimped up in here.
I'm not roughing it. This is like pretty good.
You've got
living,
you've got your custom leather man van dog blog seats.
It's a nice.
Those are cool. You've got your fridge you showed me. It's like this pull out cooler situation.
Like cooler that you plug in that is powered.
Right.
And it slides in and out. It's pretty awesome.
So this van with all of its accoutrements, you love it. It's perfect. And when you were showing it to me, I was like, yeah, when did you get this van? What's the story? And you're like, oh, I manifested that. And I laughed. I loved the word choice. I manifested that. I was curious. Could you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I'm learning
story?
a lot about the power of the mind and the power of your thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's kind of ironic. We're in the thought room.
Yeah.
So this kind of is a good story for the thought room.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm learning, like, getting into meditation a couple years ago. And, I love reading. So I started reading these books about, the power of your mind, the power of your thoughts, and how you can manifest your reality. And it makes a lot of sense. If you're in a negative mindset, a lot of negative things tend to happen to negative people. And so you start learning about the law of attraction. And, at first glance, it seems like a bunch of voodoo stuff. And, I started really experiencing it while I'm on the road, the synchronicities, meeting people, and, like vibrations, like attracts like. So I read this book about, manifesting your reality. And I was like, you know what? And I was already, had a pretty good meditation practice. And a lot of like stuff that happened in my life, everything I've really put my mind to, I've accomplished. And, football, like when I really decided I wanted to take the next step and like focused, I would take the next step. But if I was making excuses and blaming people, I would not, kind of be stuck. And it kind of correlates to like life's lessons. So I decided to give this a try. So I sat down at the end of my trip last year. I was like 7 or 8 months in. I was driving back for Thanksgiving to spend the Thanksgiving with my sister. And it was coming towards the end of my trip, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. I was like, do I want to continue this? Do I want to, get a job? Do I want to start a company? Do I like what's next? Because, this is kind of drawing to an end. And I got invited to go speak at this tiny house festival. And they wanted me to bring the van down and do like a speaking engagement. And I was already up in Virginia. It was down in Florida. And I was like, I don't really want to drive the van down there. And it was like a week before Thanksgiving and have to drive all the way up. And so I made sure, I was like, is there going to be builders there, like van builders? Because if I can go there and talk to people and get a new van built that's more comfortable and just fits my needs better, then I'll come down and speak and do the whole thing. And they're like, yeah, there's going to be tons of builders. She sent me all these Instagrams of people. And I was like, okay. So I agreed to do it. I flew down, went to speak, and it was like not what I expected. It was like a way smaller festival. There was like, and it was more tiny houses than vans. There wasn't a lot of vans. There was a lot of school buses, a lot of schoolies converted. It was a really cool thing, but it was a lot smaller time than I thought. I thought I'd be speaking to a couple hundred people and like maybe like, stadium seating kind of thing. I had this like vision, and I'm like really, one of my biggest fears is speaking. So like I was playing this story in my head, like trying to like overcome this fear. And I was, that's part of the thing. I was like, I wanted to attack this fear. So I agreed to do it. And I go down there. And I don't really see any vans. I get there the night before to kind of check it out. And there's just like a few lawn chairs and like this little tiny house theater that they have. It's called the Traveling Tiny Theater. And like, that's where I'm going to speak. So like, I'm supposed to speak on Saturday. I go there Friday night. I'm like, oh, this is going to be like way easier than I thought it would be. Like just go share my story. So the next day I show up and I didn't really see any vans or any builders, and I was like, you know what? Let's go see. Let me backtrack. So I'm back at my sister's before I fly down, and I'm like, okay, if there's builders there, let me try to really focus and meditate on this. So it was the first time I actually like consciously sat down in my meditation and focused on the van I wanted. And it was I wanted a brand new, I wanted a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van, high ceiling conversion. And I didn't like all the specifics in here. I didn't really know like exactly. I didn't really care about that. I kind of knew the outline, but it was basically I wanted this like chassis, this exact chassis. And so sat there and I meditated on it for 5 minutes and like tried to manifest it. And I was like, you know what? Like, I don't know if that's going to work, but okay. So I go down Saturday, wake up, I go to this festival, getting ready to speak. And I walk around like an hour before, and there's this in the back corner, there's like this like van circle of like all the vans they invited. And these are all like the speakers. And this is where I would have parked my van if I would have drove it down. And so I kind of went, a lot of them like old VWs and like no new vans. And I was like, dang, my van would have been awesome here. Everybody would have been like, oh, this is such a cool van. I could have told my story. But I walk in the very back is this van sitting there. And I'm like, oh, that is a dope looking van. And I go and I meet the guy and he's giving tours. And I'm like, okay, like give me a little tour. And he's like, yeah, this. And I'm like, is this for sale? He's like, yeah, I'm selling it. Literally 2 minutes in the tour, I like looked at him. I'm like, I'll take it. He's like, what do you mean? Like, we haven't talked like about price or like anything. He's like, it's a big purchase. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is my van. Like, I came here for this van. And I think I kind of freaked him out. And he was like, whoa. Well, I was like, here's my card. This is what I do. And he's like, no, I know who you are. And because he followed me on YouTube because he's a van builder and he like is really into this whole van life thing. So he followed all of them. And so I was like, oh, that's cool. I was like, so you know my story? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. So I got a little bit of money, like we could talk about that, but like this is my van. And he's like, okay, well, let's do like a van trade and you can drive it. And he was really cool about it. He's like, let's see if you like it before we do anything. I'm like, okay, cool. Like I should probably take a step back. I was like, here's my number. And I just was worried he was going to sell it to someone else. I was like, don't sell this to anybody else. Like, this is my van. He's like, okay, like I'll call you first. So he ends up hitting me up 2 weeks later. He's like, I'm not going to be able to sell it till like February. I think this was in November and Thanksgiving time. And I was like, oh, that's perfect because I was moving back to Tampa at the time. And that was exactly when I was about to hit the road again. And so he called me 2 weeks later and he's like, yo, like something changed. Like I can sell the van. He's like, if you want it, it's yours. And so I ended up getting the van and it is now here in perfect harmony with the universe.
Wow.
Pretty amazing. Yeah.
That's an incredible story.
And I actually partnered with the guy and we built we're building more vans to, get more people on the road with this lifestyle because I think it's becoming a bigger thing. And, with the internet and all the opportunity, a lot of people are going mobile and they're realizing, there's different ways to live life and it's a beautiful life. And that's another reason I'm sharing it is kind of give people, the perspective of you don't have to go, get a 30-year mortgage and slave away your whole life. You can kind of minimize and, get mobile and enjoy your life a little more and go see things.
We were talking about that yesterday, just how much there is to be said for when life is simple, the simplicity of things and not having a whole bunch of stuff. And just, we had this incredible meal that you made where you smoked all these veggies. We had cauliflower, we had pepper, we had these smoked Brussels sprouts, and it was just so epically beautiful. And I don't know if you want to speak to that, but you had some thoughts on what it's been like for you to actually downsize and live life more simply, and even on an energetic level, what that feels like.
Yeah, so when I first decided to hit the road, I had like a condo in Tampa, a bunch of furniture, bunch of stuff just filled, and I didn't want to get a storage container because I didn't want to have to pay for it. I had all this furniture. I didn't know where I was going to be when I was done. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to sell it. And I got on those little apps like OfferUp and I tested it out. I had a lamp and I put it on there. I was like, offer up $10, lamp, boom. someone's like hit me up, they're like, hey, I'll give you $4 for it. And I was like, nah, how about $8? And we like did the whole back and forth like bartering thing. Finally, we agreed on like $6 for this lamp. Like, okay, I'll come over this afternoon and come pick it up. Comes and picks it up, and I'm like waiting around for a couple hours, and he ends up getting it at $6. And I'm like, what was that? Like, that was just way too much stress and like back and forth for $6 to get rid of this lamp. I was like, and I don't need the money. I don't need the money. And I was like, you know what? Like, I don't want to stress about getting rid of all this. And I wasn't lamp. Like, we got furniture, couches, TVs, like all this stuff that I accumulated over, a couple of years living in Tampa. I had like a 3-bedroom apartment, and I made the decision. I was like, you know what? If I could find a charity to come help me with movers and volunteers and just come take all this stuff and just give it away. And so I ended up finding Metropolitan Ministries, which is a nonprofit in Tampa who helps, the community a lot. And they had a bunch of volunteers, moving trucks. And I was like, yo, if you guys come, you guys can have all this stuff. And so I ended up giving it all away. I gave away 70% of my closet. Basically, if it didn't fit in my van, I didn't bring it. I gave it away. And I was not like, I knew like giving away stuff would feel good. I was helping people, but like the physical, like literally felt like a physical weight was lifted off my shoulders, and it like allowed this space that I didn't even know was there. When you get rid of stuff, like we talked about last night, people have a garage full of stuff and they just pack it and like, for some reason, I mean, I get it. Like my dad doesn't like giving away stuff, and he works hard for his money. And when he buys something, he feels like I worked hard to get this. And even if it's outdated, like a VCR, like what do you need a VCR for? But there's one in the garage. Like it's like this fear of like letting stuff go. And even though it's in the garage, it still takes up space, not only in your house, but in your like inner space as well. And there's such power in giving stuff away, especially like paying it forward to people that, maybe are less fortunate, that, don't have an opportunity to get this stuff. One man's trash is another man's treasure. And so it not only feels good to like pay it forward, but to clear that inner space, and it just allows for, more experiences and just makes you feel lighter. It's very powerful.
It's very powerful. And again, we were relating this last night as I was describing. There are some similarities in the overlap of our Gypsy lifestyles. And I was saying how I feel like I have stuff all over. I have stuff, in upstate New York. I have stuff in Canada. I have stuff in Brooklyn. And just what that feels like sometimes to have things all spread out and trying to remember where's my hiking backpack?
Your psyche feels split, right?
Totally.
Your energies are in different places. Absolutely.
Totally. Yeah. So I look at something like this, a simplified sort of life, and I see what it's actually done for you. You have a certain lightness to you to be around, and I think that that's something we could all be paying more attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, they use stuff to make them feel good. Something new feels good. So they go on Amazon, they press the button, they get it in their doorstep 2 days later, and it makes them feel good. It's a little hit of dopamine, right? And, it wears off. And then you go put that thing after you don't use it as much as you thought you would, or it's just gets old, you put it in the garage and then it takes up space. And yeah, I think a lot of people will, if they worked on clearing that space more often, it would they'd see a lot of good results. One of my friends, really cool thing during Lent that he did was for the 40 days of Lent, instead of like giving up something, each day him and his wife would take an item and put it in a pile to give away. Like, so over 40 days, it was 40 items that they ended up not having or using. They ended up giving away. It could be an article of clothing, it could be something in the kitchen, whatever, something big or small. But that's a pretty powerful thing to do. I think a lot of people should, maybe implement that.
That's like Marie Kondo does Lent, Do you know Marie Kondo and that whole, it feels like it's a thing that's trending right now, but it's that art of, what is it? The sacred art of tidying up. Or, I don't know. I'm obviously misquoting it terribly, but you see people now like organizing their shirts in the drawer so perfectly. And basically the premise is like, if it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it.
And that's minimalism.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I saw the documentary Minimalism on Netflix like 2 or 3 years before I hit the road. It was like right when it first came out. That was probably 5 years ago now. And it really was so powerful because minimalism isn't about living like the way I live or getting rid of stuff. It's about, if it doesn't add direct value to your life, then it's taking up space. And so it doesn't matter what that is. Like if you love shoes and you have 100 pairs of shoes in your closet and they make you feel so good and you love collecting them, like that's your thing. Like go ahead, collect shoes. Like that, you could be a minimalist and have all those shoes. But it's if there's something over like this shirt that you haven't worn for 3 years that is in your closet, like, and you're not wearing it, like get rid of it. There's no purpose for it to be in your space. And so that's why I love minimalism, because it's not like a standard set of rules. It's, find stuff that adds value to your life, that makes you happy, and just get rid of everything else.
Super wise in so many ways. You were talking about seeing that on Netflix, and that reminded me of what we were talking about earlier with that Netflix documentary, The Magic Pill. And I'm thinking of this because as we speak, I am drinking this coffee that Joe made for us this morning. It's got MCT oil and butter, grass-fed butter,
and a little bit of heavy cream.
And
what do you think, though? Is it good? Like, taste-wise?
It's very good. It's very good, especially because, and I'm sure we'll dive into this, I don't eat a lot of dairy. So this feels like such a luxurious, velvety treat. And I was kind of joking with you. I was like, how much fat do you think is?
I never really actually thought about it, but there's a lot.
Yeah, like you were like probably 30 grams of fat. I'm like, awesome. But this kind of ties into, I intermittent fast. I practice intermittent fasting. I believe you do as well.
Yes.
Is that correct? So, I mean, for myself, and I want to hear what your process is with this, but I generally feel better when I do not eat until after noon. Like noon is when I'll probably break.
At least till 10 a.m.
Yeah.
If I'm feeling really hungry, but usually not. When you're eating a lot more fat, you tend to not get as hungry. It satiates you a lot more. Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems with our society in America, health-wise, is the fact that the majority of breakfast options, people think they have to eat right when they wake up, which is false. You shouldn't be eating right when you wake up because it spikes your blood sugar and it creates these energy imbalances, and that's why a lot of people feel this lethargic crash, early afternoon, and they feel like they need to get coffee. It's because your blood sugar is spiking, especially if you're eating high carbs, high sugar for breakfast. A lot of people eating like bagels, which has like 40 grams of carbs. These health, quote unquote, health bars that are slammed full of sugar, processed carbs, and they fill you up and give you energy, but for like 30 minutes, an hour, and then you're getting hungry again and you're like starving. And it's crazy. Like I've been doing keto for over a year now, and I just went on vacation to France, and I kind of was like, you know what, I'm going to enjoy the food, and the food over there is absolutely fantastic. Like everything was so clean and good, but I ate like a lot more carbs. I let myself eat bread. I usually, like, bread's one of those things I just don't eat bread. And I was like, you know what, I'm on vacation, I'm going to have bread. And it's crazy how like I could literally like got so hungry like 2 hours after I ate because my blood sugar would spike because of all the carbs, and when it dropped, like I got starving, like hangry feeling. And when you're doing keto, and it's not even keto, but when you're eating more fats and not fueling your body with all these carbs, you don't get like that hangry feeling, that like really painful in your stomach, like I need to eat something, I'm going to pass out. This high, what's it called? I forget the word. But anyways, so like high fat, I think everybody not necessarily needs to get into keto, but everybody can benefit from eating less carbs and eating more fats. Fat's got this bad rap in our society. It's kind of crazy.
I was going to ask you about that. What do you say to someone who's maybe listening to this going, I mean, they're still on the old old school method. They're still on the research from, 15, 20 years ago. And they're like, no, fat and cholesterol, high
Yeah, I get that
cholesterol.
all the time. Like, aren't you worried about your cholesterol? Aren't you worried
Because
about
you know
clogging your
what?
arteries?
That was a good marketing campaign. That's why. So, but I'm curious to hear, what do you say to those people that come to you with that?
Well, cholesterol is very important, and I'm not like 100% like all the science, and I'm not a doctor and all this stuff, but what I've learned is like cholesterol is an important part of the body, and there's good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, and there's different kind of fats, and certain fats lead to different kind of cholesterols, and I can't like recall all of the specifics behind it, but I just know from my experience that eating more fat and it's like makes me feel clearer. It makes me have more energy. And
What were you eating like on a typical breakfast before you became
that's another thing with
keto?
working out is like I always had this mindset of I needed to eat or work out on a full stomach. Like you needed to have fuel before I worked out. And I read a couple books where it's like, that's false. If your body is being fueled by fat. So when you go into ketosis, your body either is fueled by glucose or by ketones, which is what your body turns fat into. And so when you're fueled by glucose, the body doesn't really produce glucose, so you need to eat in order to that. So it converts carbs into glucose, converts sugar into glucose, and that's what your body burns to use for energy to operate. It can either burn that or ketones, and your body has a ton of fat in it, right? So when you're in ketosis, your body is burning fat cells, and the only way it can get into ketosis is through the absence of carbs. So if there's no glucose in there for it to burn, the body naturally converts to burning fat. And that's why fasting, even if you're not in ketosis or on the keto diet, if you do a long fast, your body's going to naturally, once it depletes all those glucose, it's going to naturally go into ketosis and start burning fat. And that fat is a way more efficient fuel for the body and for the brain. And the brain wants to be burning ketones. And the crazy thing is when I started doing keto, I mean, everybody talks about the keto flu and it takes a couple weeks to get keto adapted. But once you do, and you start eating more fat and not as many carbs, you're literally like my brain felt like it ran better. I had higher energy levels. I used to be like a big napper in the afternoon. I take a lot of naps, and I like just have this sustained energy throughout the day. And literally like I feel like clearer, like I can think clearer, like everything's kind of heightened, and it's a really wild experience. And once you experience that, you like don't want to go back. And then you start going down the rabbit hole of like, holy crap, like we've been lied to this whole time about like what nutrition really is. And like the food pyramid is the base of the food pyramid is like all these servings of bread and carbs. And it's like, what is that? Were we lied to? And then you start going down the rabbit hole of, what else have we been lied to about? And then you start learning for yourself and doing the research and start realizing like, wow, like there is a lot of misinformation out there. And, thank goodness for the internet and podcasts and people talking about it, because that's the way I've learned. But a lot of people, they take stuff at surface level and they don't do the research or experience for themselves.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. And this is another thing I love about you. You're very autodidactic. Like you decide that you're going to learn about something and you're just like, yep, okay, books ordered, podcasts, audiobooks, I'm doing it. And, you've got your drawer here just full of
I
some
just like downsized on my books. I have another
amazing
like
books.
15 books in this closet.
And I've read a lot of those books. And, actually yesterday we had that wild moment where I came out of my car to greet you and I saw the book that you had on the picnic table.
Wow.
And we went down that rabbit hole of realizing that we were both like reading the same book and finishing that same book from
The Surrender Experiment.
Yeah, so I'm listening to that on audiobook right now.
What a story. Highly recommended.
Michael A. Singer.
That will absolutely blow your mind.
He writes The Untethered Soul, which should be definitely on your list. But you are, you have this wild trajectory to your life. You are this top performance athlete, living the dream of what so many young people in America aspire to be. You made it. You did it. now you're 30.
30.
You're 30.
Yeah.
You're still so young. And so now you're in this van, kind of like, what's
Just learning.
next?
Just learning about life, experiencing it.
Yeah. And you're this incredible chef, which I got to experience last night. So you have this
thank
interest
you.
in food as well.
I don't know where that came from. I think once I started realizing, eating healthier, I wanted to cook at home. Another thing I think is a big problem is all of the hydrogenated canola oils that people cook with, and it's everywhere. And I think it's hard. I have a really sensitive stomach. My digestion has been an issue for a while from all the anti-inflammatories I've taken from football, and it's been an issue I've been trying to fix. And I think one of the biggest things is that it's hard for the body to digest those oils. So I started cooking at home using, olive oil and coconut oils and avocado oils and these healthy fatty oils. And I noticed a huge difference. And so I started cooking for myself more and more. And now it's like I don't even really want to eat out. And when I do eat out, I make healthier decisions. But it's crazy how once you start experiencing what feeling good actually feels like, you get more in tune with your body. And, if I go eat something, it's fried or just not good for you, like I literally feel like shit, and it's crazy.
What was it like growing up? I mean, what was your parents cooking or your mom's your mom and dad's view of health? Were they kind of on this trajectory
No, they
with
still,
you?
my sister's the one actually, my older sister's the one that actually introduced me to keto. And it was when I was done playing football. She never really talked about it before because she knew she lost a bunch of weight on it. Her husband lost a bunch of weight, and I was still playing football, and I had to keep weight on. It was actually a couple years before I was done playing. I started doing paleo, which is just basically eating natural. Like if you can kill it or grow it, like you're good. So it's just like none of the processed stuff. Which that was kind of the first time I was like, whoa, I feel good on this. Like just eating cleaner. And I lost weight. Like it was hard for me to keep weight on. I actually played at like 280 that year, and I was just really small. I played well, but it's hard to play when you're that small at the position I was at. And so when I came back the following year, which ended up being my last year playing, they were like, you need to gain at least 10 or 15 pounds. And in order to do that, I had to eat like a little bit shittier, and I had to eat a lot of like breads and thicker like starches to like keep this weight on. And so when I was done playing, I was really like, one of the things I've been looking forward to. I mean, I've been between 290 and 315 my whole life, like just working hard to keep this weight on. And, that takes a toll on, everything. And so I've always been looking forward to when I was done playing, like losing the weight and seeing what that felt like. And like it's been amazing, like shedding, like I think I'm at like 240 now, so not having that extra 50 to 60 pounds on me is better on my knees, my ankles, like all my injuries. And I just feel like I'm fueled better. And growing up, my parents didn't know. I don't think a lot of people knew. I think it's a huge generational thing with, even my parents now. I try to share with them about all these diets or all these, nutrition facts I'm learning about, and, cooking meals and these recipes, and like how eating more natural. And they just, I think sugar is the problem. It's an addiction, and it's hard for people to say no. And they don't realize how much sugar is in absolutely everything. Everything that our, food companies make, they put sugar in it, and it's an additive that makes things addictive. And it, keeps people in this like low vibrational state. And it's hard when you're set in your ways, and it's hard to talk to the older generation about all these new things that are coming out. And I'm sure when we're older, there's going to be things coming out that we shouldn't be doing or change. But yeah, it's wild. It's wild to talk to them about it.
Yeah, and sugar has so many names too.
Mm.
It's really sneakily done now with sucralose and fructose and all these different.
Dextrose and anything
Yeah,
with lactose. I mean, even like milk has sugar. That's all sugar.
totally. Totally. And it's funny you mentioned paleo because that was kind of uh, how I blossomed into this world of nutrition as well, because I was diagnosed with Lyme's disease a few years ago.
Mm.
And I used to be an athlete as well. I played college rugby, and I was a cheerleader and all of these things. And once I got Lyme's disease. My joints my inflammation went through the roof. I gained about 30 pounds. Everything that I used to eat and was fine was just not fine. I almost couldn't eat anything and I didn't know what to do. And I started to look into being paleo to kind of control the inflammation. And that was when I started to just learn so much about reading labels.
Yeah, reading labels is so important.
And I have this thing, I was talking to my mom about this actually because I was just visiting her in Canada and she was like, oh, well, this is gluten-free. And I was like, well, yeah, but Mom, there's also like 20 ingredients. Just because something says organic or gluten-free, that doesn't mean it's good. And they know now, like the food industry knows that people are waking up and getting excited about good food. So they will take every single opportunity to try and capitalize on that.
Yeah.
But I have this rule personally where I look at a label and if it has more than 5 ingredients, I don't want to buy it. And I got to know what every one of those, like if it's cacao, cool, if it's coconut oil, cool. Like I got to know what it is and hopefully it's organic too. Because these things matter. And you and I were talking about the vibration of food. I think that's a really interesting topic. We were talking about vegans, we were talking about plant-based, and even the word vegan, how that's like a little bit supercharged now because it's become, as we were talking about, almost a religion of its own in a sense.
Yeah.
You have some vegans who
almost cultish,
who can be really impassioned about it to the point that to people who are not vegan, it seems intense, like they're being proselytized to. And I understand that because whenever you're really passionate about something and you believe that if everybody could just hear this message, it would be for the greater good. I mean, that's essentially what every religious leader believes too. That's why people are trying to share this message. So, you and I were toying with that idea. It's like, how do we bring ideas like being vegan, although you and I are both not completely, but we were talking about identifying more with this term of being plant-based. And what does that mean for you to be plant-based?
Yeah, so I was doing keto heavy, having steaks every night, bacon, sausage, high fats, and my digestion was still, it made me feel good. I had good fuel, but like my digestion still wasn't very good. And I started realizing and learning more about nutrition. I actually read this book called Genius Foods, and it's all about the brain and how to prevent these dementia and Alzheimer's later in life. And honestly, like I could point back a lot of my practices I've got into, like meditation, feeling my body the right way, is all trying to be proactive because of football and all this stuff coming out about CT and brain trauma. So I've always been doing like, how can I be proactive and try and prevent this? And so I'm learning about food, and it talks a lot about the micronutrients. And although I'm getting, the macros, the high fat, no carbs, I mean, I'm not getting all the micronutrients that are good for the brain and good for the body and good for like repairing. And I started realizing it's not really about the macros. Like the macros kind of take care of itself if you're eating healthy, but getting all these little micronutrients is so good for the body and it's good for the gut. And I started learning about the microbiome as well and probiotics, and, my gut was messed up and I'd have like really bad, movements, like it's just not solid. And I just thought it was always normal. And I started realizing, what the best thing to do for a gut is to have variety, and a variety of different nutrients in there and different microbiomes to kind of help digest. And this is all like new science coming out, and they don't really know like what kind of different biotics are like good, but they just know that the more diverse it is, the better it is. And so I started like, I'm just going to eat a bunch of variety of vegetables. And I was still eating meat and I would still have these digestion. And then I was like, let me try and cut out meat and do just veggies and see how I feel. I started feeling really good and started having like normal movements. And I don't know if that's just because of me, but like I kind of reset my microbiome. That's what I believe in my stomach. And it's all from the variety of micronutrients, not having like the same thing every day, but having, different like cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, different cabbages, probiotics like kimchi and kombucha, and all these live forms helping my stomach in the digestion process. And I've just felt so good. It's been kind of like a slow build. It's not like a decision that I just like snapped it, like, let me try this. It's like I've kind of just experimented and been, the more in tune I've been with my body, I've been just kind of listening to it,
I love what you just said about being tuned in and listening to it, because this is my new way of eating. And I have, at different points in my life, much like you, have been on very special diets to try and perform a certain way, or at different points in my life, I was dabbling in bodybuilding. So those are highly restricted.
Really? Were you yoked?
No, but just more like figure modeling,
Oh, okay.
So, there's certain like restrictive diets, and you're weighing out your food and you're eating in certain ways. And
very strict.
I can and you were laughing about my discipline thing, because I have this very strong discipline when I decide to do something. And when I do a diet, I don't like the word diet, but when I do a practice like that, I'm all in. Preparing for my plant medicine ceremony, I was all in. I did not mess around. I was not adding salt to anything. I was not drinking any caffeine. I was just laser focused. But what I've learned now about the way my body wants to be interacted with is that there's this idea of intuitive eating. And I think a lot of people are getting on board with this. And this is another thing that we could talk about, that some people are going to say, that sounds absolutely woo-woo. What do you mean you're talking to your body? What do you mean you're listening to what your body wants? But that's truly what it is. And I don't mean if I want a chocolate bar, I'm like, ooh, body, like, do you want a chocolate bar right now?
Of course it's going to say, yes, give me that damn chocolate.
Okay, good. I'm going to validate that. It's not that. It's almost like some days I just wake up, I open my eyes, and I'm like, oh, I start dreaming about food. And this is like, I love food. So this is not weird. But like, even if I'm not going to eat till noon, I'll wake up in the morning, the sun's filtering in through the window, and I'm like, eggs and spinach. Yep. Eggs and spinach. Okay, let's go. Let's do this day. Like, I'll just get a intuitive like whisper of what it is my body, like you're talking about those micronutrients. It's like my body will just be like, yeah, you haven't had that in a while. You haven't had maybe like salmon in a while, or, avocado. You could eat a whole avocado today. You really could. Or like a spoonful of nut butter.
And how do you, I don't think it's, it's hard to get to that point. I think there's other practices mentally that you need to be in tune with to really connect with what your soul, what your spirit, what your body is trying to tell you. Because if you just wake up and you're on the standard American diet, you're not going to be like, okay, what do I need? It's because your body's going to crave all that bad nutrition and those different vibrations, right? So it's all about a process to get to that point.
You're right. And I think that you and I are both in that process now. We talked about our meditation practice, and I had this moment, I woke up, got out of my car, saw you getting out of the van. We had an exchange, and then it was like, okay, I'm going to go meditate. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go meditate. And I love just like being like, hey friend, going to go meditate.
Yeah,
like, see you
let's
after.
Go do our thing.
What a special, cool thing that was in a little moment. And I think that the meditation absolutely has been part of tuning in with what's real. And we talked about Michael A. Singer's work, and either of his books. If anybody reads those, you will get a sense of these voices that we're talking about. And there's the voice that occurs, and then there's this other you, this omniscient you, the observer
of the voice,
who's watching the voice. And
wow,
yeah,
meditation is everything, and it's hard to talk to people because it's a practice it's intimidating, it's overwhelming, and it's hard to see the results unless you literally like for like a couple weeks like decide I'm going to sit down for 10 minutes and give this a try. Because you're always going to be busy. You're always going to find something else better to do. And the reason I got into it is because, like I said, I started, I think Tim Ferriss is the first person that talked about it. And then Dan Harris's book, 10% Happier. And I really related to his story. And he was so real about it. He was like, meditation isn't going to solve all your problems, but the best I can say is it's going to make you 10% happier. And I was like, you know what? Like, that's the most honest thing anybody's ever said in the book. It wasn't like some fix all thing. And so I was like, you know what? I'm really going to try this. And I started learning about the science of it helping with the brain trauma and how I wanted to be proactive and train my brain. And I was like, that's why I committed to it. And it took me a long time to really get into where I was like doing it every day. But it's all about consistency, right? So if I woke up and it's like, all right, just do it for a minute. And, there's all these apps out there now, and then they keep track of like your days in a row, and it makes
Insight Timer.
Insight Timer is what I use now.
We got to friend each other on Insight Timer.
The one I started with is Headspace.
Yeah.
And that was really powerful because there's really good illustrations that kind of walk you through like what it is and like explains it. But it's a hard practice to really get into. And once you get into it, like, there's so many layers and levels that you can continue to just like train the mind. And it's literally the most, like, to me, it's the most important thing anybody could ever do, the most important practice, because it changes everything. It gives you distance from your crazy monkey mind that is always chatting and always has something to say about everything. And you start realizing you are not your thoughts, and you start not judging your thoughts. Like, if something pisses me off, it's okay if my thoughts are saying piss me off. I don't have to like go get pissed off and like go down that rabbit hole and start like yelling at people. It's like, okay, just take a deep breath, like, and let those thoughts go. And it's such a powerful thing to have that detachment. It changes everything.
Wow. Yeah. I'm just even thinking about this morning as the equipment was malfunctioning and you were just so chill. You were like, yep, take your time. Maybe this is what's meant to happen. And I was like, yes.
Breathing too.
Those reminders.
Taking the breaths. There's a lot of levels to it.
I love that you started meditating almost in the way that you would take a supplement in the morning. It's like, it sounds like what I'm hearing, your intention in doing it was to be proactive, like you said, about brain trauma. And so you're like, oh, okay, like this is a thing I'm going to do in the morning along with taking this and like doing this.
Yeah.
And
it's hard. You don't see the benefits. You don't see the benefits right away. And then you start realizing, I mean, a lot of people, this is what I hear and this is what I experience as well, is like, am I doing it right? Like, I just keep losing concentration. Like, that voice in my head keeps, I just all of a sudden, like, because I started with doing counting, like counting to 10, and then I'll get to 3, and all of a sudden, like, I'll be like, wait, how long have I not been counting? I've been just thinking, and I'll be like, okay, and then you start over 1, 2, and you count the breaths, and all of a sudden I'm at 3 again, and I'm like, I can't even get to 10, and then you start getting to 10, but then all of a sudden you'll count to 20, and you're like, why did I keep going?
Yeah.
Like, am I doing this right? And what you realize is the power of the meditation is in the realizing you are distracted and going back to 1 and then starting over. That's the rep. And when I started relating that's the rep. So when I started relating that to, it's like doing a bicep curl.
Yeah.
Like, every time you do a curl, like, that's what gets you stronger, is that resistance, is that tearing. So every time you go back, like, that's 1 rep.
Right.
And then those reps, you start getting better at those reps, and the concentration stays longer and longer. And even now, like, I'll just notice the voice, I'll get distracted, and it's like, those reps, those are what important. It's not the fact that you got distracted, because even the monks on top of the hills, their mind's going to get in the way and they're going to get distracted, but are they able to go back, and those reps get less and less because they get stronger and they strengthen the mind?
It's a training, right? It's a training, and we're carving new neural pathways. We're saying, this is the channel I want to be in. I want to be in more paying attention, in more happiness. And there's this one of my favorite Buddhist teachers. She's a Buddhist American psychologist named Tara Brach. She has a great podcast. And she always says this thing that humans, we have this negativity bias to, like, we were even talking about haters last night, and you get that one comment and it just sticks with you. We have a propensity to just fixate on the negative. And so what Tara Brach said is, you're driving in your car and you see a beautiful sunset or a meadow or something. She says, focus on it. Focus on it and hold it in your mind, in your awareness for 20 seconds, I think is what she says. Because if you just let that thought happen and move by you, it's fleeting. But if you can work with it, kind of alchemize it, let it moil around in your working memory, that is when you start to encode new pathways and deepen those grooves of, I want to feel this kind of gratitude more often. Cellular encoding. It's like feeling a feeling inside of you and like holding a beautiful feeling, like a moment of being in love or hugging someone, greeting an old friend. And instead of just doing the action, being in it and being like, oh, yeah, I'm going to sponge up the essence of this sweet, sweet moment. And then I think by doing that, we attract more of it into our lives.
And you can cultivate that. You know, the mind is a muscle and you can strengthen it. And there's tools you can use. And I'm really big into science. Like I love when the science is like proving all this stuff that has been around for a long time. And they're doing all these fMRI scans of the actual brain of people in meditation and they're lit up. And there's like, it's not just some voodoo thing like you're trying to do concentrate. Like you said, the neural pathways in your brain are rewiring and you're literally becoming like a stronger person with your emotions, with your mind. And there's proof of it. They have it on the scans. And I'm a big like research guy. Like I love learning and reading. And when the science backs up this stuff with actual hard proof of it changing your mind, and you know, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm really nervous about what football did to my brain, and it's a really important part of our lives, obviously. And so when I saw those charts, that's like when I committed. I was like, you know what, this is something I need to do. I need to get better at. And then you start realizing that the experience of life completely changes, and then you start like falling in love with it because it is making you enjoy things more. Like you have gratitude for things, like just being out in nature, like sunsets, like you said. You just, instead of looking at a sunset and like, oh yeah, that's a beautiful sunset, and starting like putting your thoughts on the sunset and judging it and being like this, that, and then your mind's still racing, but just letting all that go and just being in the moment, being present with the beauty of the sunset. It's like such a beautiful thing. It makes you appreciate life more. Like, what is that? Like, what is a sunset?
Right.
Like, it's a beautiful painting every night that is completely different and unique. And then you think about that's just like what we get to see. But the macro is this little rock going around this big ball of burning gas. But it's like such a beautiful thing that it's God's painting right there for you to see every night. And I mean, it's freaking incredible. Like sunsets do something for me. I love it.
So that's a good question. Sunrise or sunset? What's your preference?
Oh, I love them both. I would say everybody needs to experience this. Let me tell you a story. I'm driving in my van from Texas to California last year. I had my sister's wedding in Texas, and a week later, one of my good friends from college wedding in California. So I was like, I'm gonna hightail it from Texas. It took me 3 days. It was like a long time. And so I was in New Mexico, I believe, and I was driving all in one time from New Mexico to Cali, and it was like 14 hours. And I was like, you know, every now and then I'm like, you know what, I'm not gonna break this up. I'm just gonna do it. And I love driving, but I woke up at 4 a.m. If anybody's ever driven through the desert or New Mexico, there's no like street lights or anything. So I woke up at 4 a.m. It's pitch black. Like once I left the city and got on like the open 2-lane highway, there's nobody out there, maybe one car passed with headlights. So it's pitch black. And as I'm driving, you know, for miles and miles, 100 miles till the next town, you know, the sun starts rising. And so it's like this pitch black kind of turns into like a dim gray. And it's like this night light's turning on. And you start seeing the horizon a little bit. And it's like this slow, like someone's just turning a light, like a little dimmer light on. And the sun's not even close to getting up yet. It's just like this light pollution that's coming over the horizon. And it's lighting up, and everything you can kind of see outlined of the desert. And then all of a sudden, it's like a 2 or 3 hour process. And all of a sudden, the sun just like peaks over the horizon, and it's flat. I mean, if you've been in the desert, driving through the desert, you can see for miles, like 50, 100 miles. And there's these little mountain ranges in the horizon. And it's the most majestic, beautiful experience to just be there in it for 3 hours. This like sun's rising. Sunsets happen so fast.
Mm.
Like, okay, the sun's there, but you're not appreciating it until it like gets kind of down low, and then it's like 30 minutes later, it's gone, it's dark. The sunrise, it's just like such a slow process of like the world waking up. So that I love, driving through the desert. Everybody should experience that. It's beautiful.
That's a beautiful, beautiful story. That reminds me a lot of a moment that I had when I was moving to New York City, and I was at that point living in Edmonton, Alberta, and I was embarking upon a 40-hour drive across North America, and I I remember this moment of saying goodbye to the man that I was spending my life with at that point, and we had effectively decided to end things, and standing outside our house in Edmonton at like 4 a.m. saying goodbye to him, and him saying goodbye to the dog, and us getting into my little Kia and weeping and driving away being like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And getting in the car and starting to drive across the Canadian prairies. And that feeling that you're talking about in the desert is the same feeling that I had, this expansive flatness, and watching the sun come up over the horizon and pour light everywhere. And I had been thinking, I can still turn back. It's not too late. And the moment that I saw the sun, I was like, I'm going to be okay. And I got to keep going. So now I'm here sitting in your van.
Wow, what a journey.
No, but
some of those decisions are like, they're some of the hardest decisions.
Yeah.
But it's a test, and getting through those decisions leads to some beautiful, beautiful stuff. And I think both of us are in the middle of what that is. And I don't know what it is yet, but it's quite the experience, quite the journey.
I was going to say, what's next for you? What's next on the docket for experiences?
More meditation. I'm just trying to connect with what it is. I mean, I feel this calling, this pull to be used for something big. I don't know specifically what it is, and I think it's okay that I don't know what it is. I think I want to write a book about this experience because I'm an avid reader. I love books. They've completely changed my life. There's something about, you can watch a documentary, watch a movie, read an article, watch something, that's educational. You can go on social media, but reading a book and it's getting into somebody else's mind and their thoughts and like really learning like what's going on in like their lives and their story. Like it's just, there's nothing like it. And since I love books so much and I've learned and I've read and I've learned so much from them, I like, like I have to write a book about this experience. It's such a unique thing that I'm doing, and I've learned and grown so much. And it's wild because I've never thought I was a good writer. I've gotten better since I've been reading, but it's like, I don't know how it's going to manifest, but I just know that a book is coming, and we'll see how that turns out. I don't know how long or when. I just feel like it's something that I can share. Sharing something on social media or Instagram or making YouTube videos is just such a small sliver of what's happening and what the experience is. But I feel like if I can put it on a book, I can really kind of tell the tale of it all. So that's something I've been thinking about. But yeah, I mean, I'm really kind of at a crossroads of really where this thing's taking me. I'm trying to enjoy the experience as much as I can. That's kind of how it all started. Like I was done with football, I was in this transition, and I hit the road to kind of just enjoy my time and have fun, not having to worry about anything. And I think I'm getting to the point where, this has led to so many crazy cool opportunities. I've met so many people, all these synchronistic moments, and I don't think any of it is accident. So I'm kind of just, trying to quiet the mind and let the universe guide me and connect to the moment and see where it takes me. But it's definitely, I mean, it's exciting. It's scary. I get stressed out sometimes. But yeah, just trying to remind myself to surrender. I mean, that's why it's crazy that we're both reading that book, because I was literally I was kind of real stressed out just a few days ago, and I was gifted that book by a friend, and she's like, we did like kind of a book exchange. I was like, you should read these. She's like, you should read these. And she's like, this is the one you should read. And it's wild how the universe puts these things on your path when you really need them. And, it's called the surrender experiment, and it's okay not to know, but to just surrender to what the universe has in store for you. I mean, there's this grand plan. I truly believe that it's all laid out, and it's just all about how you relate to what's happening in your life. And I think meditation, that goes back to meditation, is a tool to enjoy every experience. Don't judge it good or bad, just let it be what it is. And when you do that, life just gets a lot more enjoyable, and it leads to, like, I'm living it. Like, a lot of people, they have their routines, they're stuck in their rut, and they're like, don't know what to do with their life. They go to work, to go home, and watch TV. Like, I'm living the synchronistic moments. I've had moments where it's like, I'm just going to surrender this. I don't know what this means. And it leads to some crazy cool opportunity. Even in football, like, I got fired or cut from the Falcons after I blew my knee out week 1 of the season. All the rosters were already set, and there's a lot of details here if you're not like into sports, but basically I kind of got screwed over by the Falcons. And at that time, I didn't have enough money to like do this or retire, or like I was kind of on the street, like, well, what am I doing? There's no real opportunities out there for a center. And, even at that time, I just took a deep breath, and as hard as it was, I was like, you know what, there's something good that's going to come out of this. Like, it all happens for a reason. Like, I've always had that mindset. It always happens for a reason, always happens for a reason. And even though it was really hard, I just kind of connected to that, trusted it, ended up getting an opportunity in Tampa. I went down there as a backup with minimum salary, with all these incentives, because I was supposed to get paid pretty good money that year as a starter, but I went from starting week 1 of preseason to getting cut. It was like this just downward spiral that happened really fast, and I was like, what just happened? And I went to Tampa as a backup because my old coach from the Falcons got fired like a year before, and he went to the Tampa. He's like, hey, we need a backup. We don't have a guy that can play like both center and guard. Like, come over if the opportunity's right. I went there literally the first week I got there. I got there week 2 of the season on a Wednesday. I dressed for the game on Sunday. I didn't even know a lot of my teammates' names. I knew a couple of the guys that were like big names, and I didn't really know a lot of the calls, but it was kind of the same playbook that I had to relearn. And in a couple of days, like, I have really good recall. I learned it. Went out there, first play of the second half, the starting center rolls his ankle. Boom, he's out, 6-week injury. So I go in there, and nobody knows who I am. Like, they're like, who is this guy? And I'm like, oh, this is it, right? Go in there, end up like balling out. I was like, I'm just gonna do me. Like, I'm just gonna play hard, and I end up playing. 6 weeks later, the guy comes back from his injury, and I was playing so well, they kept me in there. I ended up starting the next 2 years. I made all the money that I would have made as a starter because I hit all those incentives. And I went from like my situation in Atlanta, I always felt like I was a guy trying to make a name for myself, and I was never given the full opportunity. I felt like I was always like the replaceable guy, the guy that's like kind of just a fill in. And I went to Tampa, and I had this whole new experience of the NFL where it was like it was a younger team. I came in, I like was there for a few days. I went in and balled out, and I like became this leader of the team, and people looked up to me and respected me, and I like really belonged. And like, I'm so thankful for that. And it was like I had to go through this experience where I was like, I could have looked at that like my life's over, like I'm done, I missed my opportunity. But it was just the universe, like, it's time, like you're done here, go over here, it's gonna be beautiful, it's gonna work out. And it ended up working out. And so I've experienced it enough where I have this trust to the universe, is like, you know what, like, I could look at this as something that's terrible. I mean, even with my ex, like, we went through a lot of stuff, and I'm very thankful for her. Like, I don't look at that as like, oh, that was such a waste of my life. Like, it didn't work out. Like, I could have spent that time doing other things. Like, no, like, I enjoyed my time with her, and it was a lesson that I needed to learn. And I'm so thankful for that. And it's led me to this. And right now I have no idea what I'm doing, but I just know it's like right where I'm supposed to be, you know?
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. I say that at least 10 times a day.
Joe Hawley, thank you so much for being my guest and coming on the Thought Room.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh,
I'm so proud of you. And what an honor to be on here as one of your first guests. I know this thing's going to really take off. You have an amazing voice for this and amazing mind. And it's a beautiful thing. I'm really excited to be a part of it.
I know you'll be back.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm already looking forward to it. We have so much more to talk about. We have we
definitely.
just barely scratched the surface.
I know. There's a lot here. And how can people find you if they want to find you online?
Yeah, so I'm on all social platforms at manvandogblog. I use Instagram mostly. I try to respond to everybody that DMs me. So if you want to reach out, go ahead and do that. That's the best way. I would love to hear from you.
Thanks for being on the pod and safe journeys.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.